Hello and welcome to tonight's forum. Thanks, Chris. My name is John Veggetto. I'm the chairman of the Hillsborough Democratic Organization. The purpose of this evening's event is to introduce the candidates for the New Jersey 7th Congressional District and encourage everyone to become involved in this year's election process.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Tonight's event is sponsored by the Hillsborough Democratic Alliance, which is the Democratic Social Club here in Hillsborough, of which Ann Iannone is the president. Appreciate it. To learn more about the two Democratic organizations in Hillsborough, I encourage you to go to our website at hillsboroughDemocrats.org. I would like to thank the candidates for their efforts on behalf of the Democratic voters and for coming to our forum on such short notice. I'd also like to thank the many Hillsborough Democrats who helped make this event possible tonight. Allow me to introduce the candidates.
Pledge of allegiance, John.
Well, that's a good idea. Yes. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, allow me to introduce the candidates. From left to right, we have David Pringle, Scott Salmon, Chris Corpello, who's representing Peter Jacobs, who's out of town, Gautam Joas, Tom Malinowski, Linda Weber, and Lisa Mendelblatt. As you all know, this is the year we need to take back Congress, and it begins with the introduction of these 7 candidates. But for those of us in Hillsborough, we campaign annually to flip our township from red to blue. With each election, we narrow the gap, but we need your support. Get involved. Come to Democratic meetings to learn how we're bringing the fight to them. Consider running for the township committee. Become a district committee person. Donate generously, can't stress that enough, and volunteer to support our township campaign. Tonight's forum is being recorded and will be posted on facebook.com/HillsboroughDems and on hillsboroughDemocrats.org. We ask that you hold your applause until the end of the forum, because we have a limited amount of time and we're already running late. We begin with opening statements from each candidate. We've asked them to provide their background, qualification, and why they are running for Congress. Then they will answer 3 prepared questions that the candidates were only made aware of moments ago. The order the candidates will speak was determined by a lottery earlier this evening. The first candidate to speak, to make an opening statement, will be David Pringle.
Thank you, John and Merrill and the Hillsborough Democrats for hosting this forum. As a lifelong progressive advocate, I'm especially excited to be involved in this campaign this year. I have been fighting this fight, the resistance, for 30 years. I have been a lifelong resident of Cranford, and I have been working on every 2 years to get a Democrat elected in the 7th Congressional District since at least 1996 on Larry Lerner's campaign. And so this is the 11th, I think, congressional cycle since then, and is by far the one with the most energy at the grassroots. So in addition to the Hillsborough Democrats, I want to thank the resistance. I've been proud to be a part of it, not only this year, but for the last 30 years. For those of you who don't know me, you might have read an article earlier this weekend that said that I am late to the party, young man. And there's some truth to that, but there's some falseness to that. I'd like to think I'm young at 51, but I think my children and my oldest child is here would probably suggest that 51 is not young. And I'm not late to the party. As I mentioned, I've been doing this work for 30 years. In some ways, I've been doing it for 48 years. When I was 3, I was handing out lit for my father running for mayor in Township Committee in Cranford. And I do remember that. I also remember as a kindergartner writing a poem and a nice little finger painting that my father used to be mayor, soon he won't be mayor anymore, still goes to a meeting, so let the new mayor know what to do, but soon he won't go to meetings anymore. I remember it from very early on. I am running for Congress for 3 reasons. While I've been doing this forever, we have new major threats that are unprecedented in the last year. And yes, it is Trump. I am not motivated by Trump. I have been doing this forever, but he really brings it to the fore. Related to that is Leonard Lance is an enabler of Trump. I've known Leonard Lance since 1992 when he was a state assemblyman, and we have to hold him accountable. He's an enabler. I will also speak later on about, because I'm getting the yank, how I have the professional and political campaign experience, legislative experience to get the job done on the campaign and in Congress. And finally, again, I am born and bred in this district in New Jersey. I have hiked the Millstone River, I've saved the Raritan River, I've canoed the Delaware River. I live and breathe the 7th District. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Scott Salmon. I am an attorney. I live in Scotch Plains, not that far from here. I grew up here in the 7th District. I'm running for Congress because I want everyone to have the same opportunities that I've had to succeed. But what I want to do in the short time that I have is I want to tell you a quick story. Back in 1937, Lyndon Johnson was 27 years old and running for Congress, same age as me. He was in a field as crowded as this one, literally the same number of candidates. But what made him special was his relentlessness. From sunup until after midnight every day, he refused to stop for even a moment because he knew it was too important. He spoke at every rally, met with every business owner, knocked on every door. He convinced every single possible voter to vote for him. He won that election. I intend to do the same. That is the type of candidate we need, and that is the type of campaign that I am running. Because we are facing some serious challenges in the coming years. We are facing increasing economic inequality, a growing racial divide, an assault on women's rights. We're facing unaffordable health care, unaddressed climate change, and unbearable student debt. So we need someone who is able to meet those challenges, not just next year, but for the next 20 years. So yes, we need to flip the 7th District to a Democratic district. But we also need a new generation of leaders. One that will fight for our values, but one that knows that the only limits on what we can achieve are those set by our own imagination. As I said, my name is Scott Salmon, and I'm hoping I can show you over the course of tonight and over the course of this campaign that I deserve your vote. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Crapello. I work with Peter Jacob. I've been working with Peter since the fall of 2015, and I stand with Peter today because, just like Scott addressed, we are facing what I like to call generational issues. These are problems that are going to be felt for the next 100 years and beyond. Gender inequality, extreme wealth inequality, the climate crisis, perpetual warfare. All of these require generational thinking, generational foresight for generational solutions by the next generation of leaders of this country. That's why I stand with Peter Jacob. See, he's a social worker, and he recognizes and has seen firsthand the impact that these problems have on society through the faces of the people that have made their way through his door to his desk looking for his help. And he recognizes the opportunity that is provided by the public programs that are now under attack by the Republican-controlled administration and Republican-controlled Congress. We need to restore these programs and provide the opportunity for everyone. More importantly, our campaign is telling the truth. And it's a truth that more and more Americans are waking up to every single day. That truth is that our democracy is broken, our government is corrupt, and our economy is rigged. Why is all of this? At the core of every single major issue we face is a broken democracy that does not respond to us. It is bought and sold by the ultra-wealthy and multinational corporations. We must solve our broken democracy before we can ever have hope at solving anything else. We aren't just a political campaign for CD7. We are plugged into a national movement, we have national support, and we are looking to restore the essential core constitutional freedom that is the power of we the people to govern ourselves. Once we do that, we can hope to fix everything else. Once we do that, we unite people. Once we do that, we win.
Thanks, John. Imagine, if you will, two young men driving home on New Year's Eve. They've gone out to get some food, and they're coming back. In the passenger seat is Robbie Tolan. His cousin is the driver. They make a suspicious turn. Now, I don't know what a suspicious turn is, but I think it might have something to do with the fact that they're two young African-American men in an upscale, predominantly white neighborhood. They turn into their driveway. A police officer follows them in, calls for backup. When he arrives at the house, Robbie's parents come to the door. It's their house. And it's a textbook example of how to behave in a situation like this. They say, comply with the police officer's instructions. They say, this is our house, that's our son, that's our nephew, that's our car. There's no problem here. In the meantime, Officer Jeffrey Wayne Cotton has arrived on the scene. He gets out of his vehicle, gun drawn, he grabs Robbie's mother, pushes her up against the garage door. Robbie says, get your hands off of my mom. He's shot 3 times in the chest by Officer Cotton. Fortunately, Robbie survived. He sued Officer Cotton, and when we won his case 9-0 in the United States Supreme Court, it was the first time in 10 years that they'd ruled for a civil rights plaintiff in a case like that. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America. The promise that if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll have a fair shot. That promise is slipping away for far too many people because our civil rights and civil liberties are under attack. Because immigrants are being torn away from the only home they've ever known. People like Ramses here in Somerville, a dreamer who I met on my tour of all 75 towns in the district. That promise is slipping away because over the last 8 years, as income in the country and in the region is up in New Jersey, it's down 6%. The promise is slipping away for far too many people right now. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America. As a litigator, as an activist, and as an organizer, I've fought for those American values over the last 20 years. And I hope that you'll stand with me in the coming weeks and months. And together we can keep America's promise for all Americans, and not just powerful special interests in the privileged few.
I'm Tom Malinowski. When I was 5 years old, I remember my mother pushing a wad of cash across a table into the hands of the corrupt communist official in the little town in Poland where I grew up, where today would be considered a warm spring day. We were trying to get a passport to come to America. And even at that age, I'm 5 years old, and I know there's something wrong here. This is a place where people who have power can kick the crap out of people who don't have power, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. I managed with my mom to come here and to grow up in New Jersey and to have a normal, happy New Jersey childhood, but I always knew, growing up, that the things that we consider normal in America are not really normal. They're incredibly precious. They're easy to lose. And I grew up not wanting to lose those things for my country. So all of my life, I have been fighting in one way or another to try to protect what makes this country special and great. As a human rights activist, I worked in the Congress to pass legislation to take on the Bush administration and its policies of torture. As an Assistant Secretary of State for President Obama, I traveled all around the world advancing the values that we believe in as Americans. And I'm running for Congress because I see all of those things that I defended on behalf of our country under attack in America right now. President Trump, every single day, is going after our core institutions, our unity as a country, and now he is going after our state of New Jersey. This tax bill that he passed with the help of Republicans in Congress is a deliberate attack on states like ours where people have chosen to have better schools, better services, better infrastructure, where we create the wealth that makes this country strong. This is wrong. And I don't believe the vast majority of Americans support it. I want to be a candidate who taps into the unity that I believe exists in this country among people of goodwill, who want sensible policies on the economy, on jobs, on the environment, on healthcare. People who do not want to see our president getting into a fight with Kim Jong-un over who has a bigger button on his desk. That is the kind of unifying candidate I want to be, and if you make me your nominee, if I have that honor, you will have a nominee for this seat who has fought battles in Washington, defeated Republican presidents in Congress, who has achieved more in that place than Leonard Lance ever has, despite the fact that he's a congressman and I'm not, and somebody who can bring the national attention and support that we need to this race in our district to win. Because if we do not win, nothing else that we say here today will matter. I'm Tom Malinowski. I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
If you had told me a few years ago that our president would be sending tweets about nuclear war with North Korea, or if you had told me that we'd have white supremacists marching openly in our streets, or if you had told me that my son's girlfriend would have a harder time getting birth control than I did, I would have told you you were crazy. But every single day, we see that progress is fragile. I'm a wife and a mother. I have 2 boys that graduated from the New Jersey Public Schools here in Berkeley Heights, where I live. I have been on the board of the American Cancer Society here in New Jersey, and I have a 30-year career as an executive in technology and finance, frequently the only woman at the table. And I've had a lot of great opportunities in my career. And I like to believe that I've used my influence to give open doors for other people, women, people of color, LGBTQ Americans. And I've seen progress. You know, 50 years ago, a woman in banking couldn't have both a career and motherhood. I did. In fact, I was on the front page of the American Banker newspaper 8.5 months pregnant. That was a sign of progress. But now we have Lance and Republicans lining up behind Donald Trump, supporting and enabling his backwards policies every step of the way. Progress is fragile. Now, we made progress with Obamacare, and then Leonard Lance voted to repeal it 60 plus times, plus voted Trump care out of committee. I will fight for the Medicare public option on the exchanges. You know, I thought we had put to bed many years ago that women had the right to control their healthcare choices. Leonard Lance has a 3% Planned Parenthood score. I will fight for a woman's right to choose and to fund Planned Parenthood. We made progress cleaning up our environment. And yet Leonard Lance has a 13% conservation voter score. I will fight to fully fund the EPA and to fully fund the EPA. Finally, we need tax reform. But Leonard Lance enabled the GOP tax scam to move forward. I will support tax reform that truly grows our economy and really does help those who need it, not the ultra-wealthy. You know, progress is not a given. Progress is fragile, and that's why I'm running to be your representative in the 7th.
Thank you to the Hillsborough Dems, to my fellow candidates. Most of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Lisa Mandelblatt, and I'm running for Congress. You're all here tonight because you're trying to figure out which one of us is the best candidate to beat Lance in November and help the Democrats take back the House. I want to take a few minutes, too, to tell you why I'm running and why I'm that candidate. I'm running for Congress because we need someone in Washington who represents us and not Paul Ryan. I am convinced that the best way to get elected is to make personal connections with voters. I am that person. It is what I do. And that is essential to winning and beating Leonard Lance. I'm going to be ready on day one to work on your behalf because I understand what this job means. One of the most important things that you do as a member of Congress is constituent services. Making sure that the folks in your district are getting what they need. I am prepared to do that. I'm also fully aware that when I get to Congress, I am going to be a member of the freshman class. I am going to go into a committee where leadership believes I belong. And in whatever committee I end up, I am going to be an active member. But I'm not going to stop there. I am going to make sure to reach out to other members of Congress, build coalitions, to make sure the issues that we care about here in New Jersey 7th, access to affordable, quality health care, making sure that our infrastructure is invested in and improved, jump-starting our economy, that those issues are being addressed in Congress. I am going to be able to do that because I have the skills. I grew up in this district. I know this district. I left to go to Cornell, to go to law school, and to practice law. But I chose to move back here because this is where I wanted to raise my family, where I wanted to work, and where I wanted to volunteer. And now I want to go to Washington and represent this district in Washington. Thank you so much, and I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you. Now on to the three questions. They are, number one, what issues affecting the New Jersey 7th District and the United States are most important to you? Number two, what resources can you bring to the campaign in terms of staffing, funding, and coordination with local campaigns? And number three, what makes you the best candidate for the New Jersey 7th District? The first candidate to speak will be Lisa Mandelblatt.
All right, let me look at my cheat sheet here. Okay, the issues that are most important to me are the issues that are most important to you because the job of Congresswoman is to be a representative, which is why I have, since announcing my candidacy on May 3rd, put probably, I don't know, about 8,000 miles on my car. I have been all over this very, very large district. And I've done probably 75 of these kinds of meetings in all different shapes and sizes. And what I've been doing is listening. Because I can't represent you if I don't listen. And the issues that I'm hearing over and over and over again, people are so concerned about their health care. Making sure that we've got to look at the goal. The goal is to ensure that every American has access to quality, affordable health care. We've got to figure out how to do that. We need to fix New Jersey's economy. We are lagging behind and have been doing that since 2008. One of the key problems here in New Jersey is our infrastructure. I don't care if you vote Republican, Democrat, Independent. If you've got to get anywhere in this state, or God forbid, try to get over a border, it's a nightmare. We have got to have a member of Congress that is going to make sure that funds that we pay in our taxes come back here in New Jersey to invest in our infrastructure. Many of us are on the Raritan Township line. We don't have one-seat ride. The western part of the district doesn't have high-speed internet. We are never going to catch up if we don't take care of the basics here. We also have to focus on closing the gender wage gap. When 50% of all households are headed by women, it's not a woman's issue, that's a family issue. And the issue that's near and dear to my heart is education. Our education system should be the envy of the world. We need to invest in our schools, invest in our teachers. We need to make college affordable. And for students who choose not to go on to a four-year college, we need to be investing in vocational and technical training in our public high schools and two-year colleges. Those are the issues that I've been hearing over and over again, so I assume those are what's most important to everybody. The resources that I can bring to the campaign, I have been the top fundraiser in this race to date. Why that matters? It costs a lot of money to run a congressional race. We're being told this race is going to cost somewhere to $5 to $7 million. It is astronomical. But that's how you get your message out. We've got to be able to get on TV. Look, Lance is getting free TV time on MSNBC almost daily at this point. I've got to be able to get onto TV. I've got to be able to do commercials. I've got to get my message out. So the fundraising matters because of that. I have a remarkable team. Even though I'm a first-time candidate, I'm working with people who have run and won campaigns. What else are we supposed to talk about? Oh, the coordination. Look, I'm a Jersey girl. I have lived here. I have deep ties to this community. I grew up in Springfield. I live in Westfield. I was there on election night when the Westfield Dems not just won the mayor's race, we swept it, and it felt good. And that night at the victory party, I had 200 odd people turn to me and say, Lisa, you're next, and we're here for you. This is going to be a grassroots movement. We're going to tap this energy that we are seeing. I mean, look at this. It is freezing cold, January 3rd with a snowstorm coming. And we had to drag extra chairs in. This is exciting. I want to tap into that, and I know that I can because of my ties here to the community. And that's what makes me the strongest candidate. I am here to listen to you, to represent you, to be your advocate in Washington. It's what I have always done, and it's what I will continue to do. So thank you so much, and I hope I can count on your support.
So when I'm on the phone asking people for money, one of the first things I say to them, assuming they stay on the phone with me, is, what issues are most important to you in Washington or with Congress? What problems bother you the most? And I have to tell you that the most common response is laughter, followed by everything. So to ask us what issues are most important in 5 minutes is a real high bar. That's a real challenge. So I'll give you a few. I think healthcare is a critical issue in this district. I hear about it all the time from folks. I did mention earlier that I think we've made great progress with Obamacare and with the 23 additional million people that now have health coverage. And I think it's really important that we, for New Jersey's exchange and others around the country, that we offer the Medicare public option to hold our for-profit insurance companies accountable for offering better coverage at a more reasonable and more efficient price. It's also important, I hear all the time that the environment is really important here in New Jersey. This is, some of you of a certain age will remember when medical waste was washing up on the Jersey Shore years ago and you couldn't go down to the beach. I grew up outside of Syracuse, New York on a Superfund site called Onondaga Lake, and there were times when I was a kid where you couldn't go down to the park because of the stench or the dead fish were washing up on the shore. That lake is going to be human swimmable in the next year. And that's only because we've had the political courage in our country to start, fund, and continue to enforce the regulations of the EPA. And so I hear that a lot around this district, that environmental protections are incredibly important, and it's something I will fight for in Washington. And finally, the economy, which kind of underpins it all. Infrastructure is certainly one way to bring more dollars back to our district. We do send, a lot more money to Washington. You guys probably have heard we only get 74 cents back. It's going to be worse after this tax scam that just passed. We probably will get closer to 50 or 60 cents back on our dollar. And we need infrastructure investment. Those are good paying jobs. I also believe that we need to develop an innovation zone here in the district. About 50 years ago, we ceded our #1 spot in technology to the West Coast. You pull out that phone that's in your pocket right now, 50% of the technology that's in that phone was developed down the street from where I live in Berkeley Heights at Bell Labs. We need to bring those jobs back. We need to we need to work on public-private partnerships. We also need to look at what New York is doing and seeing if we can triangulate with Buffalo and New York City with some of the stuff that's being developed there from a technology perspective. So we need innovation zone in our district, and I think that will help grow the job base, and those are good paying jobs as well. Finally, pay equity, women's health, women's right to choose, these are economic issues. These are family issues that really matter, and those are other things that I will fight for. And in my 30-year career in technology and finance, I've spent a lot of time fighting to make sure that women and people of color that worked for me had equal pay, and that they had the same opportunities that other folks in the companies that I worked for had, and I think that's incredibly important. The resources that I bring, yes, I think every one of us up here knows that fundraising is critical. Fundraising is critical. And we are fundraising nationally as well as locally. However, I have a lot of experience, you've heard, 3 decades, building businesses, turning businesses around, launching products both nationally and internationally, and I know how to build an organization that can support a campaign, a professional campaign, against a very experienced campaigner. We forget Leonard Lance has been in office for 30 years, roughly, between federal and state. We need someone that understands how to build the infrastructure of an organization that can take this campaign where it needs to be, which is beating Leonard Lance. But keep in mind, we're one of the 23 most flippable districts in the country because Secretary Clinton won the district, yet we unfortunately re-elected Lance. There are national eyes on this race. So we need to have a candidate and a campaign infrastructure that can deal with that, that can take advantage of those media opportunities, that knows how to work with the media, that knows how to get the message out. Absolutely, advertising is going to be important, but earned media is going to be important as well. And then finally, what makes me the best candidate? I present the greatest contrast with the most experience to Leonard Lance. We're running against Leonard Lance, right? 30-year career executive, technology and finance. Technology underpins our entire economy. Having to work across the aisle with people different than me, I've been learning how to do that my entire career. It's those skills that will make me successful, not only beating Leonard Lance, but also successful in Congress. And I see the big red stop, so thank you.
Thanks. I agree with Linda on a lot, including how hard this question is to answer. I make the mistake of waking up every morning, don't do this, don't try this at home, and checking my Twitter. And, well, it's too late. And it's overwhelming, you know the feeling. Every morning there's 10 things to get angry about, to get frustrated about. And one reason I'm running for Congress is I wanted to stop tweeting about it. I wanted to start doing something about it. And I think all of us who are committed together to this goal of flipping the 7th district, we know that there is one thing that we can do that will help across the board. And I find that to be somewhat comforting. There's a discipline that comes with that, and it's, again, why I'm running. The issues that people raise with me, I think we're all going to be a broken record about the tax scam, partly because of the obvious ways in which it hurts New Jersey, and I mentioned I think it is designed to hurt states like ours. This is deliberate. But it's not just that. When I was in the Obama administration, we tried to get things like free community college for young people in this country. Boy, would that be useful for kids at Raritan Community College today, whose fees go up every single year. And you know what the Republicans in Congress said? They said, it's too expensive. We can't afford that. We tried to fund infrastructure projects. We tried to get a better version of the Affordable Care Act. We tried to everything we tried to do, too expensive. But throwing away more than $1.5 trillion, adding that to the national debt that our kids are going to be saddled with, suddenly is not too expensive. And then 2 weeks later, they turn around and they say funding the Children's Health Program, which used to be bipartisan. That's suddenly too expensive. So what is at the heart of this tax bill is a statement about the values that those people stand for. Those are not the values that we stand for, that people in this district stand for, and I'm not just talking about Democrats. I think most independents and Republican voters in this district would agree that that's not right. Number two, it is economic malpractice. At a time when the overall national economy is relatively strong, to add that much to the national debt. What on earth are we going to do when there's a recession in this country after we've already thrown away $1.5 trillion to people who don't need it, to companies who are hoarding cash right now rather than investing it? It makes no sense. And that's why number one priority, if I'm elected, will be to work with my fellow Democrats and responsible Republicans in the Congress to repeal this bill and to replace it with responsible tax reform, because we do need that. We do need tax reform that lowers rates and gets rid of deductions and loopholes, and that is revenue neutral and fiscally responsible. Number two, health care. There's not much I can add to what we've already said, but people haven't noticed, as much as they should, that the tax bill repealed the Obamacare mandate. I rely on the Affordable Care Act personally, and it's not affordable enough. It needs to be improved, and it is going to get less affordable when 13 million people lose health care and stop paying into the system because of this terrible piece of legislation. And finally, something that I think is overarching, that affects everything that we care about, and that is the attacks on our democracy that we are seeing from this administration. Democracy cannot work in America if we don't have some institutions in this country that are above politics. A free press that people trust. Law enforcement agencies like the FBI that people trust. Justice Department that is independent. And what happened, particularly around Christmas, when Trump went after Mueller and went after the FBI of all things, was just so disturbing to me, because if we lose that, if we become a country like a lot of the dictatorships that I confronted when I was an American diplomat, where law enforcement becomes political, where the press becomes political, we will no longer be a country of laws, we will be a country of competing tribes. So when that happened, I put out a statement. Another thing I did was I made a personal donation to the FBI Officers Association in support of the people who Trump was denigrating. And you know what Leonard Lance said and did? Absolutely nothing. It falls to us now as the Democratic Party to defend law enforcement in this country, and I would love to see that contrast in November. In terms of resources, we all agree they're fundamentally important. When we release our results for our first quarter in the race, I think you will see how successful we have been. I believe we will be, at that point, by far the best financed campaign in this race. And in terms of why I would be the best candidate, because I have been effective. My commitment to the principles that all of us share, that all of us are committed to equally on this stage, has been tested in a lifetime of effective service for this country and for the values that we believe in. I told you the story briefly of passing anti-torture legislation in the Congress. That was a Republican Congress, and I worked with people on both sides. The President of the United States fought us tooth and nail. He lost and we won. It is not easy to stand out as one of 435 members of Congress in the House, especially if you're a freshman. I have fought there, I have won battles there. I will not have that problem. I can be a leader from day one. And I think that is a profoundly important difference at a time when we're going to be entering Congress, one of us, in a critical period in the history of this country. The last 2 years of the failing and flailing Trump administration, where everything that we care about is going to depend on whether Congress can come together in defense of our common values. And I look forward to being a leader in that effort. Thank you.
So in terms of the issues, one of the first things I did when I started this campaign was pledge to visit all 75 towns in this district in 75 days. And that's not just because it sounds catchy, but it's to actually be out and talking to people at train stations and on Main Street, in living rooms and walking into small businesses and asking what's important to them. In this district, infrastructure is a critically important issue. It's important because it's a way to invest in jobs, good paying, sustainable jobs. I was having this discussion with my wife, and I said that. I don't know why I was in campaign mode with my wife. And she said, well, infrastructure is about jobs because I'm going to get fired if I keep showing up for work late when the trains are canceled. Infrastructure is about education because of the student who couldn't apply for a college scholarship because she had to apply online. And it took 5 minutes to click from page 1 to page 2, and the website hadn't saved the previous page, so she couldn't apply for her scholarship. So we have to invest in infrastructure. We need real tax reform that helps working families throughout the country, throughout the district. This tax bill isn't it. It's a giveaway to powerful special interests, and it's a giveaway to people like Donald Trump. Donald Trump says this tax bill is going to cost me a fortune. Believe me. Well, a question that I've asked Leonard Lance on social media, and I've called his office and I haven't gotten an answer, is do you believe him? Because I don't. So one thing that I would do in Congress is fight for real tax reform. The Trump-Lance agenda on this has been terrible. And don't let Leonard Lance say, oh, I voted against the bill. First of all, there's a reason he's on the list of least effective members of Congress time after time. And make no mistake about it, this tax bill is every bit as much Leonard Lance's as it is Paul Ryan's and Donald Trump's. And that's because the most important vote that Leonard Lance casts is on day 1 for Speaker of the House. And once that domino falls, Leonard Lance has no influence in the Republican caucus on anything else. On health care, of course we need to support the Affordable Care Act and strengthen it. They say integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. Well, when Leonard Lance thought no one was watching, he voted dozens and dozens and dozens of times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And now he says, oh, well, I voted for the repeal in the committee, but then I voted against it. That flip-flop is too little too late. The other thing that I will say is that not only has Leonard Lance done nothing on taxes, nothing on health care, nothing on environment, he has done one thing. You should know this. His recent legislative accomplishments, about a year ago, he sponsored a bill and got it passed, signed by the president, by President Obama, that makes it illegal for you to get sued if you write a bad review on Yelp. So, we're in a world where we are on the verge of a nuclear war given the president's Twitter finger, and Leonard Lance is focused on Yelp reviews, and I think that law sums him up in a nutshell. As to the resources of what it'll take to win, we all know that finances are important. We've been out fundraising both locally and nationally. The other thing that's quite important, I coached semi-pro football. I was an offensive coordinator for about 7 or 8 years. And we knew that going into any game, going into any season, we need the right strategy and the right team. And those are the kinds of things that it's going to take to win this race. The right team. My campaign manager is Joey Novick, who managed the campaign of Upendra Shivakula in 2012, what I think was the best managed campaign against Leonard Lance. Heading up my field operations is Josh Levin, who managed the campaign of the candidate in 2016 against Leonard Lance. Running my communications is Juan Melli, who handled communications in the governor's office for John Corzine when he was a governor and ran communications for the city of Hoboken. It's going to take the right strategy, and that means confronting Leonard Lance with his record, not letting him get away with these flip-flops as he's realized that he needs to go to Paul Ryan and ask for permission to disagree the minimum amount of times that he thinks he can get away with the Republican line to guarantee himself re-election. We're not going to let him get away with that. As a litigator, I cross-examined many witnesses. I approach this campaign like cross-examination. Because at the end of the day, the witness doesn't have to tell you he's lying if everybody knows that he's lying. And that's how we're going to beat Leonard Lance. And as to connecting with the local campaigns, I've been out I've made, I don't know how many hundred phone calls, knocked on how many hundreds of doors in the 2017 election cycle supporting our state and local candidates. I think it's a bit presumptuous to say what we'll do in the local community. There's a great grassroots effort that's built up organically, and certainly we want to listen to those groups and let the resistance leaders be a part of that as well. And as to my background, these are issues from civil rights to economic issues, working with our family business. These are issues that I've been fighting for and winning on for the last 20 years. I got my start in civic engagement, served as the youth governor of New Jersey, organizing and mobilizing young people to get involved in politics. Those are things that we're going to continue doing over the next 6 and then 11 months in this election. And I'll just close with a quote from Robert Kennedy. He said on the night that Martin Luther King was assassinated, "In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to go in." And we're here at the beginning of 2018, 11 months from an election, and in this difficult day, and in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask who we are as a nation and what direction we want to go in. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America, and I think there's going to be a blue wave in November to keep that promise for all Americans. Thank you.
We've heard a lot of issues mentioned here tonight, but what I didn't hear was why. Why was this tax bill passed the way it was? Why can we do nothing on climate change? Why can we do nothing to stop the rising gun violence and the NRA's hold on our government? Why? Because our government is not working for we, the people. It is bought, it is sold long before you or I get into the voting booth. When you have a tax bill that has over 70% disapproval rating and it passes anyway, that is not a functioning democracy. After Sandy Hook massacre, when you have 90% support for universal background checks and it doesn't pass, that is not a functioning democracy. When you put the CEO of ExxonMobil as the Secretary of State, that is not a functioning democracy. Climate change, the climate crisis, is an end game for us right now. A couple months ago, a researcher from the University of California, I believe in San Francisco, came out, peer-reviewed paper, and said, by 2100, there is a distinct possibility that the human race will be extinct. We are facing right now, and this is proven, we are facing right now the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. If we are going to attack these problems, if we're going to solve these problems, we have to be in charge of our problem-solving apparatus, which is our government, and all levels of government. This is an issue. Do you think that Robert Wood Johnson isn't pumping money into local elections and local campaigns as they take over all of our ambulatory services throughout the area? Are we ever going to be able to really get to universal health care, which is what we should have, so long as the large multinational insurance conglomerates are able to write their own legislation? Yes, we should have universal health care because there is no reason why we should be spending an additional 20 to 25% on the profit motive that's only paying for shareholders and CEOs' private jets. If you had the wherewithal and the ability and the money to fix your own roof, are you going to spend an additional 20% hiring someone to fix your roof? No. You're not. That's a waste of money. We can and we should be administering our own healthcare. There's no reason why we should be paying banksters to do it for us. We can do that in the wealthiest country on the planet. Why do we have perpetual warfare in this world, in this country? Because Raytheon profits from it, because Northrop Grumman profits from it, because GE profits from it, and they fund hundreds of millions of dollars into corrupting our government and taking the power away from us. We have to think bigger We have to think beyond ourselves. That's why we are plugged in as this campaign into a national progressive pipeline, supported by Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution. We are not focusing on raising the most money. We are focusing on putting the money that we have into getting the message out that people already support. And I've got a great example of this. Last year, I was walking around with Peter at the Montgomery Day celebration in the fireworks, and we came across a tea party, big tea party tent. And there was a gentleman out front, he was one of the e-board members, and he was handing out literature, and Peter and I walk up to him, and I kind of hung back because I kind of had a feeling I knew where this was going. And Peter introduced himself, and immediately, first question right out of the gate, and I'm sure any experienced canvassers here have gotten this before knocking on a door. Oh, what party? Right? And, you know, being honest, say, oh, the Democratic Party. And they immediately laugh you off. They don't want to hear anything about what you have to say. Immediately shut you down, right? So this happens, and this guy goes on this tirade, shouting down Peter. Peter can't get a word in edgewise until the gentleman comes to a mention of how corrupt the federal government is and how all the power should be in the hands of the states. And that's when I stepped in. And I said, oh, you see the government as corrupt, right? Well, let me ask you, how do you feel about something called the American Anti-Corruption Act? What that is a 5-part piece of model legislation that effectively does 3 things. Places strict limits on campaign contributions, places strict limits on lobbyists, and ends gerrymandering, actually, by the way, which is huge, and slams shut the revolving door of industry and government, thereby returning the power over government to we the people. I said, would that be something that you would support? Would that be something that you would look for in a candidate and would vote for a candidate this coming November? And he said, yeah, definitely, I definitely would. I was like, well then, sir, I'd like to introduce you to Peter Jacob. He's running for Congress right here in our district. And he reared back and he was like, oh, you got me. But I'll tell you what, at the next Montgomery Democratic Party meeting, when Peter showed up to speak, that guy was there. The Tea Party guy stood up and said, I'm no Democrat, but I'm here because of Peter Jacob. That's why we're going to win. We have a cross-partisan message that gets to the core of every single other problem that we face, and the American people recognize that.
So I believe that the first and most important issue is health care. I believe that until we have secured our health, then nothing else really matters. And so that's the first thing the first priority that I would have as your representative. Since 1976, adjusting for inflation, the cost of healthcare has actually increased by 214%. I believe that we need a public option, which would increase competition. It would force private carriers to reduce their premiums. They would have to increase benefits. It would have lower deductibles. I think that's what we need to do. Because, like I said, until we have our health, then it's really hard to prioritize anything else over that. The second big issue that I think really affects the 7th District in the United States is our jobs. We need to create more better-paying jobs. That means a lot of different things. It means we need to invest $1 trillion into our infrastructure. 42% of New Jersey's roads are considered deficient, which cost you personally and every other driver in New Jersey nearly $2,000 last year in repairs and wasted time. So we need to invest in our infrastructure again. We need to increase the minimum wage. I support increasing it to $12 an hour and indexing it to inflation so we don't have to keep going through this argument every few years. It also means strengthening the laws that support our unions and making sure that workers are protected their jobs, that they don't fear retaliation. They're able to collectively organize and get stronger rights. The last issue that I'll mention, and this is not something that I think you'll probably ever hear in this district, for the final issue, is poverty. The question asks, what's most important to me, and this is the most important issue to me. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and I believe that this is a moral issue. A child born this minute in America has nearly a 50-50 shot of being born into poverty. Last year, more than 40 million Americans went without food at some point. That means that 1 out of every 8 people didn't know where they were going to get their next meal. So for me, this is a moral issue, and like I said, the question asked about what's most important to me, it's not something you'll see a lot in this district, but I think if it happens to anyone in this district and anyone in this country, then I think that it should be a concern for all of us. Now, the next question about what resources can you bring to the campaign? Well, I've as I mentioned when I spoke before, I'm a lawyer. I represent small business owners. Before that, I have worked since I was 17, I've worked for a number of different campaigns from all the way from the local level all the way up to the presidential. I've worked on them all. I've done everything all the way from literally stuffing envelopes all the way up to writing policy for Josh Gottheimer in his last election when he was just elected this past year. In that time, I've helped flip 2 districts from red to blue. Josh Gottheimer's race last year in the 5th District in New Jersey, and back in 2008 in Staten Island, which if you know Staten Island at all, is a very red area. I helped get a Democrat elected there. So I've done this before, and I know what it takes. And in a district like this, what it takes is an extraordinarily strong field program. The voters that we need are not the kind of voters that are going to be convinced by a 30-second commercial. That helped out in Josh's district up in the 5th because there were certain quotes that Scott Garrett had said they were able to just hammer against him over the air, but that's not the kind of thing that's going to work here. Instead, we need hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers. We need offices in every single county and most major towns. We need to go out and meet every single voter and convince each one of them personally, individually, to come out and talk. Come out and vote, I'm sorry. We were looking at some studies that were saying that a person is 3% more likely to vote, just in general, 3% more likely to vote if they actually meet someone from the campaign. They're 7% more likely to vote if they meet the candidate themselves. We have set some ambitious goals for my campaign for this primary and for the general election. We already have close to 100 volunteers ready and willing to go. We have partnerships with different college Democrat organizations and high school Democrat organizations. We're going to have the people that we need to go out and meet and talk to each one of these voters. This is why I think, at the end of the day, what this comes down to is that, like I said, we need a new generation of leaders. One that is relentless, one that has integrity, one that has that energy, one that has that resilience to keep fighting and to keep pushing forward, because we can flip this district if we take the right approach. I believe that I will, and I believe that's why you should support my campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm fully in the camp of everything. And I think it all begins with Trump, not because of the last year, but especially because of the last year. He is truly tearing apart the very fabric of what makes our country great. From challenging the FBI to judges to the free press, it really is Nixonian. He's even challenging basic science. Anybody who doesn't accept that climate change is happening might as well live in the 1300s and join the Flat Earth Society. A huge issue is healthcare. Like virtually everyone in this room, I'm sure we've all had our family health issues. In mine, just in the last decade, we've had cancer, paralysis, emergency room visits for asthma, dementia. You shouldn't have to worry about how to read a medical bill or how to pay for that medical bill. We need universal, affordable, accessible health care, period. When it comes to lender taxes, another big issue in light of what's gone on, I've been fighting for fair taxes for 30 years in the state legislature. And Leonard Lance is part of the problem. He has enabled Trump. If you look at his voting record, he's 86% of the time with Trump. He voted for the tax package before, he voted for it, and then after it goes on and on. The same with health care. Even when he votes the right way, he doesn't fight. And clicking a little button, voting yes or no, that's the easy thing. How hard do you fight? He's either unwilling or unable to fight. I know how to fight, and I will fight. I will win. I've been doing it for 30 years. Another major issue is climate, and not just because I'm an environmental advocate, but climate really brings everything together. Science, public health, property damage, and jobs. One of the most infuriating things I have in my 30 years working as an environmental advocate is folks trying to pit the environment against the economy. It's a false choice. It's absolutely dead wrong when it comes to climate, because the solutions to climate change create more jobs than the alternative. It saves property, it saves public health, and it saves property damage. And 100% clean energy is critical for this state and this district. We are overrun in this district with fossil fuel. We have oil bomb trains in Somerset County. We have the proposed Penny's gas pipeline in Hunterdon County. We have coal plants killing people in Warren County. And we have the Pilgrim oil pipeline proposed for Morris, Essex, and Union County. So every part of this district has a major fossil fuel fight going on right now, and I'm helping to lead that fight. So those are the major issues. In terms of local campaigns, so the question was local campaigns, canvassing, door to door. I did it for the first time, as I mentioned, when I was 3. When I was 22-year-old, I learned how to do professional canvassing. August 1st, 1988, I knocked on doors in Montgomery, Hillsborough, and Branchburg for New Jersey PERB. In 1992, John Salerno, who's now the municipal chair here in Cranford, reminded me last night of a story that when it came to Pringle in 1992, working for Frank Pallone, we didn't do lit drops, we did lit runs. You don't walk between doors to door, you run. And when no one's looking, you cut across people's property, get more done. I have worked for 30 years for nonprofits that canvass. That's grassroots. That's door to door. You know what it also means? It's not corporate power. We don't take money from polluters. It allows us to have independence that the vast majority of environmental groups don't have. And that's one of the reasons we're fighting for, right now in Congress, or in the state legislature, it looks like we're going to have a victory, a shocking victory in a lot of ways in the next few days. While people were having a nice holiday break, PSE&G was trying to take $3 billion of ratepayer money to bail out nukes that they didn't need bailing out. It's fast-tracked. The legislation exists for 6 months. No one got to see it until just before Christmas. They're trying to railroad it through, and it looks like just late this afternoon it's announced that they're not going to do it. And that's because of the fight we've been having to hold them accountable, to save consumers' money, to protect the environment, and that's the kind of thing I can bring to this campaign and as a congressman. Finally, in terms of what makes me special for this race, again, I've known Leonard Lance since 1992. I tried to work with him, and he and the Republicans in the legislature backstabbed public interest groups fighting for initiative referendum. No one, including him, and with all due respect, all great people fighting for great causes at this table, no one has fought harder, more effectively, longer, and won on legislative and political campaigns than I have. From Gottheimer, we did an independent expenditure, knocked on 60,000 doors last year. I ran that campaign to the Highlands, which affects the entire state, and especially this district. Our drinking water, it runs through, we're protecting land in Morris, Hunterdon, Warren, Somerset County, and is providing drinking water for Essex and Union County. So those are the kinds of things I will do, and I'll just close with a quick family note. I thought I was going to mention this anyway, but Linda helped remind me. My mother, when she was in her 20s, was a physicist in the 1950s at Bell Labs, bringing in the innovation economy. She wasn't allowed to continue working there because of the culture of the time. She got married in 1955, had a kid in 1956, and women didn't work anymore. So we've come a long way. And Trump is making us go backwards. He's not making America great again. He's making it worse again. And so that's why I'm running, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Before we conclude, I just want to recognize Somerset County Democratic Chairwoman Peg Schaefer. I want to thank all the candidates for coming out again this evening. Again, I should say. And thank you all for coming out. This is what makes it actually fun when you see a room that's full like this. We've got a little bit of time left. We have to leave here at 8:30 because this is a residence and we have to vacate. So give some time, so if you want to meet the candidates and talk to them for a moment, but please be observant of the time and leave it at 8:30. Thank you very much.